Absolutely, the highlight of the round was Arsenal versus Manchester City, a tactical battle. And why couldn't Manchester City grind out at least a draw? Let's start with the pressing. City pressed in a hybrid structure, shifting between 4-1-4-1 and 4-4-2. However, the pressing itself was poorly coordinated, and Arsenal quite easily managed to play out from under that pressure. Already in the 6th minute, we see the goalkeeper playing a line-breaking pass straight into midfield to an Arsenal player, and City's holding midfielder, Rodri, fails to close him down in time. Arsenal then launch a vertical attack and force City to sprint 50 to 60 meters back towards their own goal. Arsenal's attacks, once they broke through the first pressing line, were extremely vertical. Here we see Timber playing a pass into the run of Gyökeres. And with just 3 passes, Arsenal moved from their own penalty area to City's box. Why do I call the pressing scheme hybrid? Because very often there were 2 players up front. It often morphed into a 4-4-2, with Bernardo Silva stepping higher. In this situation, it looks like Arsenal players are trapped. All passing lanes seem covered. But still, that key pass is not blocked. The midfielder receives the ball in the pivot zone, and with one touch completely turns the pressing block around. Arsenal once again escape pressure brilliantly. This happens because in this particular episode, Bernardo Silva is pressing in a 4-4-2 shape. That means his focus is on closing down the center back, which is why he positions so high. But if City were pressing in a 4-1-4-1, Bernardo would have had to drop a little deeper to help cover the midfield. And so we see a huge space open up, which Declan Rice calmly occupies to receive the ball. And Arsenal immediately launch another fast attack, leaving 5 City players caught behind the ball. And in the final phase of this episode, I want to point out a very clumsy piece of defending. A City defender clears the ball blindly backwards without analyzing the situation and ends up playing it straight onto the foot of Arsenal's Noni Madueke, who can take a shot. That's simply a poor decision. You clear either towards one corner flag or the other, or out of play, but never back into the second ball zone, never into the 6-yard box. On the 5th minute here, City are in their mid-block 4-4-2. Once the ball moves higher, Rodri doesn't step out aggressively, so it starts to look more like a 4-1-4-1, since Rodri is more focused on protecting the back line than supporting the press. In theory, this setup covers Arsenal's 2 nominal holding midfielders. Yet Arsenal still find passes in the middle of the block, take their first touch forward, and progress the ball with ease. I can't understand how that happens. The whole purpose of pressing high is to prevent exactly that. Otherwise, you just end up chasing backwards. Here's an example of how the structure shifted. In 4-4-2, Haaland initiates the press, Bernardo Silva holds the line. Haaland pushes the ball towards the flank. As the ball reaches an Arsenal player close to Bernardo, Bernardo steps forward to press. So we get this hybrid 4-4-2, 4-1-4-1 system. The key detail, the holding midfielder is very deep, almost alongside the defensive line, and with good reason. For example, here Rodri shifts wide to create numerical equality on the flank, making sure the full back isn't left 2 versus 1. But when you only have Rodri covering such a huge central zone, and not even positioned centrally, but slightly offset, then you get chaos. The midfield opens up with big gaps between the lines. We see an example. With one touch, Rice plays a pass into Gyökeres, who with one touch lays it off to Arsenal midfielder, completely unmarked in the middle of the pitch. And already a runner is making a deep run in behind because City's backline was broken. A defender has stepped up too high. Kusanov was initially tasked with tracking the wide player. Rodri didn't cover the deep run either. And by the 22nd minute, Arsenal created a situation where they could easily have gone through on goal one-on-one. And also an interesting moment in the 9th minute of the match. Again, we see Manchester City in a 4-1 and a 4-1 shape. On the flank, Trossard makes a clever fake movement. He first signals as if he wants to run in behind, but then opens closer. Because of this, there is a 10-meter gap between Trossard and Kusanov, which allows Trossard to comfortably receive the ball. At the same time, Calafiori attacks the flank from his central position, joining the attack. It looks like a great attacking sequence for Arsenal. We see Calafiori lift his head before crossing, scan the situation, but then he delivers an awful pass. In the box, there are 3 Arsenal players, but Calafiori delivers the ball into the red-marked zone, an area with absolutely nobody. I think this was more of a technical error from Calafiori. What do you think? Because a player at this level, after scanning, should know exactly where his teammates are making their runs. Because of that mistake, City regained possession. There's a series of ricochets and duels, which ends with Haaland shielding the ball, and with 2 touches, he passes to Reinders, and the counterattack for City begins. In this episode, I want you to focus on 2 players, Erling Haaland and Gabriel. First, Gabriel doesn't defend tightly enough when Haaland receives the ball. Second, both players are on the same line relative to Arsenal's goal, running side by side just 4 meters apart. But then Haaland accelerates and we see him overtaking Gabriel. 2 Arsenal players are trying to delay the attack as much as possible to slow down Reinders' progression, but there's space on the right wing. Haaland makes his run there, and Reinders plays him in. Notice this. Both Haaland and Gabriel started from exactly the same position, but now Haaland is 5 meters ahead of him. Gabriel simply doesn't make the recovery run. He doesn't close the distance. Physically, I think Gabriel is capable of matching Haaland's sprint. What do you think? Could Gabriel actually do it, or did he simply switch off and not play the moment until the end? Of course, Haaland calmly finishes such chances. Despite this, Arsenal continued to dominate the game, switching play with diagonals and breaking down City's defensive block. They did it with ease, as in this example, or this one, where Trossard switches and finds Saka. In City's build-up, Arsenal pressed tightly with 2 players on the pivots. Rodri and Bernardo Silva were marked extremely closely, so there was no real chance of playing through central midfield. And in fact, this is exactly how City themselves should have defended, but they didn't. Donnarumma, who is not particularly strong in ball distribution, played passes straight into Timber's feet. In the mid-block, Arsenal stayed compact and mainly shut down central zones. Having learned from previous matches, City's left winger, Jeremy Doku, often drifted across to the right flank, trying to overload it and create imbalance. But in this match, it didn't work at all. City, already from the middle of the first half, started defending their 1-0 lead, and that was probably one of their key mistakes, completely surrendering initiative. They defended with 5 at the back. Very often the right winger, in this case Phil Foden, dropped into the defensive line to make a back 5. The left winger also dropped extremely deep. At times it even looked like a back 6, but in reality it was still 5. The idea was simple. As we see here, Doku stayed very low and wide, not allowing the chance for Arsenal to create 2 versus 1 situations through switches of play. We see Doku staying low and wide, playing almost man-to-man against Timber in this episode. In the second half, City openly focused on defending their lead, bringing on another defender. Now they had 5 natural defenders in the back line. Their only threat came from counterattacks. For example, in the 56th minute, after an Arsenal corner, Doku picked up the ball and launched a dangerous counter. Again, pay attention to Haaland. This time against another Arsenal defender, Ricardo Calafiori. Both start from the same position. Doku drives the ball forward, and we see Haaland immediately ready to attack the space in behind, while Calafiori is still stuck higher up the pitch. Suddenly, Eberechi Eze is the one forced to defend against Haaland's deep run. Haaland had a very good chance to score here. Arsenal defenders must finish such episodes properly, especially against Haaland. Just chase him, don't give him any space. City defended extremely deep. We saw their back 5 sitting very low, with the midfield 4 also dropping deep. Effectively, it was a 5-4-1 inside their own box. With such a low block, the pivot zone often stayed open, allowing Arsenal players to combine there and shoot from distance, because City's defensive line sat so deep. The only positive thing for City was that they did a good job of marking players inside the box. You could clearly see they were trying to kill the game as much as possible, But Manchester City still couldn't hold on to their lead. The 92nd minute, Martinelli, now on the right flank, first makes a movement to receive between the lines. Then on the counter movement, he attacks the space in behind. City's defensive line is very high here, and there's a perfect chance to exploit the depth, which Martinelli does. We see a City defender raising his hand, signaling the danger. He seems ready to chase back. But first, he loses in the initial burst of speed. And second, look at Guardiola. Out of the entire back line, he is the only one not ready to defend the depth. The only one. His body is oriented toward the ball, not even slightly turned to prepare for a sprint. His stance tells you he won't make it. And that's exactly what happens. He loses the starting race. The pass is played into his zone. Donnarumma then leaves his goal line. And you can question this decision. Why step out when the ball is going in the direction to the corner, not straight at goal? But he does, and Martinelli makes the only correct decision. The delicate chip over the keeper. Perfect execution. Goal. And of course, speaking about Arsenal, let's analyze at least one interesting set piece. The 64th minute, a cross from the flank. City line up with 8 players across the box, 1 in the wall, 1 in the second ball zone. 3 Arsenal players start their movement from an offside position, running toward the center of the box. Here we must highlight Victor Gyökeres, Arsenal striker, positioned the deepest. At first, he looks uninvolved, but the delivery goes directly into his zone. Meanwhile, the 3 Arsenal runners from the far post, Gabriel, Calafiori, and Saliba, are blocking City defenders, giving Gyökeres a clear run. Gabriel's block isn't the cleanest, but the intention is clear. Gyökeres bursts in from behind and almost gets his foot to the ball. A clever, well-designed set piece. If there are coaches watching this, feel free to borrow this routine. It's an interesting one. That's how the weekend's main match ended. A draw, a deserved draw. City played with the mindset of not losing, and they didn't, but it was only a draw. Their mentality disappointed me. After the early goal, they simply sat back, defended deep, and hoped for scraps on the counterattack. And this result only benefits Liverpool, the only club still with a 100% record, winning all their league games so far. In midweek, there aren't any standout fixtures, so instead we'll do an individual tactical analysis of a player. Later today, I'll launch a poll that will run until Wednesday evening. You can vote for the player you want to see analyzed in detail, how he plays, how he moves, and so on. This weekend, we'll be breaking down Atletico Madrid versus Real Madrid. Leave a like, drop your emotions and opinions in the comments about this match, and don't forget to subscribe for more tactical football content.